But here's the thing, they are non-negotiable. Absolutely. In your life or your business, they're the line you won't cross, the standard by which you measure success. And whether or not you honor them is up to you, but you will feel it if you do not. Couple things to just kind of clarify as well. Core values are not your morals or ethics. Those are external, they're subjective, and they're based on your values, but they are not your morals or ethics. They're also not your beliefs. I love a good belief system. I'm one of those people, but beliefs are inherited. They're developed, they're changeable. Ask anybody who's changed a political party or religions. I mean, it's like beliefs are changeable. I do not believe today what I believed 10 years ago in quite a few areas because I've got more information and I have changed the way I believe. They're also not external. A lot of times we talk in business, especially about business values and the values that we prefer to have in the workplace. Those tend to be behaviors and external. And I love to tell people the example of family is people say, well, family is my top value. And it's like, I can appreciate that you value your family because I do. I value my family very highly, but it's something I value. It's not my core value. But they're also not directional. They're what I would call reciprocal.
My name is Nina Makarie. Today I am joined by Andrea Johnson. She is going to teach us today about magnetic leadership. And I think that as business owners, we all want to be better leaders. So Andrea, please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about your topic, and then you are free to dive in.
Great. My name is Andrea Johnson. I'm a transformational leadership coach. And I'll give you, there's a slide that will share like all of my little wall-worthy credentials. So we're talking about magnetic leadership. I mean, who doesn't want to be a magnetic leader, right? We don't want to like cause people to follow us or make people follow us. As a leader, I think it's really difficult sometimes to make sure that we have everything that we need. So what we'll talk about today is one piece that I think is essential that will eliminate some of the hamster wheel running around trying to figure things out. So hello, I'm Andrea Johnson. I have a 25 plus year career in the graduate level administration and operations of university medical system. So I spent 11 and a half years at Johns Hopkins. I spent 11 and a half years at UVA at the University of Virginia. And along the way, I have a Bachelor of Business Administration. I have leadership training in lean awareness. I did emerging leaders work there at UVA. I got my CRA, which is a Certified Research Administrator, CAPM, which is the Associate Project Management. And then finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to do something else with my time. I am going to be a coach. And so I am now certified for leadership, speaker trainer, and DISC consultant with the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. And, I have to tell you, there are things that about doing these things that just, it sometimes it defies logic, right? So what I'd like to say to each of you as you're listening this morning, or if you're watching this on the replay, why are you here? What is it about the title of this talk that got your attention? Is it that you want to be magnetic? Is it that you want to be a better leader? Is it that core values are something that you've never really looked at? I would like to present as the whole thesis for this conversation is that it's not what you do that makes you an impactful leader. It's who you are. You have enough and you are enough, and you don't have to do anything specific to get there. We have to tap into who we are. When I talk to people about this, they usually fall into like three main categories. I have my overachievers, who are the ones who decide, yep, I am going to look at my core values and I'm going to just work it until I get it done. And then I have my overthinkers on the other hand, who are thinking about them and parsing them out and figuring out what they are, and they never actually get started. And then I have my overworked and over it people. When I do this in a workshop setting, it is so funny to see out in the audience if they've done any pre-work. I can tell who the overworked and over it people are because they're just like, you have given me 3 pages of single-spaced words that to choose from, Andrea. This is just way too much. But here's the deal. What I'd like you to know is that no matter what, whether you're an overachiever or an overthinker or an over it person, many of you will fall into what I used to call myself as a disempowered leader. These are people that, and let me know if this rings a bell for, or if this like hits a spark for you, but we have responsibility without authority. How many times do we promote people into leadership positions and then we don't give them any authority to lead? Consistent compromise is something that disempowered leaders have to do. We're always compromising our values, our ethics sometimes, our ability to lead. If you've got somebody over you that's overpowering and doesn't let you lead, a lot of times they feel stifled and unsupported. I'll share in a minute that I just felt very like suffocated, like I couldn't breathe half the time. And many of my clients talk about feeling very stifled, or they've gotten into a leadership position that they don't feel supported to do. Their work-life balance is off. I don't know that there's any true work-life balance. I think there's fulfillment, and you can do, 90% work and 10% home life if you're fulfilled doing that. And that's the goals that you've set for yourself. But what happens is we get way out of balance and we get this seesaw effect going on where we're trying to figure out what's really important to us. Many times people are bored if they're disempowered because, they may have gotten into this position, but they have no authority. And so they're bored. And many times they just feel alone. It's really kind of sad to see people feel so alone. And what I would like to propose is a whole new kind of leadership that will reflect the opposite of this. But disempowered leadership is a result of acting within those assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning that you've accepted because you haven't developed a really clear understanding of who you are. And when you know who you are, then you can stop living by someone else's principles and assumptions and become an impactful leader, where you have the authority to act according to your own convictions, these people tend to enjoy and they're empowered by their work. They have confidence to set and honor their own boundaries. How many disempowered leaders do you know that are just their boundaries are just overrun? And I can't tell you the clients that I talk to where that's one of the very first conversations we have to have after we talk about core values is like probably 80%, because we have a hard time honoring our boundaries if we don't know who we are. Impactful leaders also facilitate change and create progress in their organizations. If you're making an impact, you're actually helping others do the same thing. And when you feel fulfilled and understood, you can make the kind of impact that you would like to make. So today, what we're going to do is we are going to look at how we can move from imitating other people's principles and priorities to defining your own, which is your core values, for a sustainable way to lead. And I'm going to look at 3 myths that prevent us from doing so, that kind of lead us into that disempowered leadership. I'm going to look at a simple but profound effect of knowing your core values. And we're going to wrap it up with just an explanation of how you can both uncover and implement and incorporate your core values into your own leadership style and lead with the kind of impact that will allow you to make a difference. So I alluded a minute ago to my own story. I'm 57 and this is my second career. And I love that we're both kind of rocking the beautiful silver hair here. I mean, it's just like, yay, authenticity. And I think we both wear it quite well. But I was about 50. I was frustrated at 50. I lost my mother in February of 2017. And I just was frustrated with exactly the things that I said. I had lots of responsibility with no authority. And it was just a very frustrating way to live. I was very unfulfilled. I was also a good girl. I had followed all the rules. I had done everything they told me to do to actually become better at my job or to grow in my organization. And I wasn't growing. I even got a promotion with no salary increase. Like I said, I had lots of responsibility with very little authority. Even I had a woman who decided to retire, and instead of going to me, she went to my boss. And it's just, that's the culture that we were in. I'm like, but we have a good relationship. I know, but he hired me. It was just weird. And I felt like I was suffocating. I really did. I mean, I talk about it now, my throat even starts to close up. I had so much unrealized potential and I had very limited impact. And it made me sad. I would come home and cry. And so what I decided was at that moment, I'm going to look for another way. I am going to figure out a way to do this. And what I realized is there's like 3 major myths that I played into and that I also see playing out in my client base. And these are 3 myths that kind of push us into disempowered leadership. And the very first one is work harder. We all do that, right? It's like, I'm going to be the first in and last out. This is going to prove my worth. They're going to know exactly how hard I work and they are going to promote me. The problem is it wears you out. It makes you bitter and it produces a bad attitude. I did this for my first job out of college and I nearly got fired. And they finally said, you come in at 8 and you leave at 5. And I said, oh, okay. And what I realized is that with this one is we have to figure out why we're working. And if this is you, I'd like to say, why are you working? When you know what's important to you and what strengths you bring to the table, you really can make a difference. You don't have to work harder. It's like that old work smarter rather than harder. The second myth that I'd like to point out is the myth of getting an MBA or some special certifications. I rattled off a bunch of my certifications and my credentials at the very beginning of this workshop because we do that, right? We think we're going to beef up our resume. We think we're going to get that next promotion. And I actually took a job with the promise that I would start my MBA within the first 6 months. And then I realized I hated the job. And so I just kept putting it off and I never did it. You'll see that I got a certified research administrator thing. I hate regulations. It's totally contrary to everything that I enjoy doing, but it gave me the ability to have a better job. The problem is, or at least so I thought, your resume isn't you. It's proof that you can learn. It's proof that you can perform and follow directions. But you're this unique mixture of amazing, unique skills and experience and charisma that you, only you, bring to the equation. And that's what makes you a good leader candidate. I had 2 different jobs that told me, Andrea, we had it narrowed down to 2 people, but you had this X factor. So that proved to me that what was on my resume could get me in the door. And all I needed to do was what would get me in the door, because once they met me, I could present my strengths and my unique skills and experience, and that would help me get the job. But this last one is such a tricky one. It's this myth of training consistently and reading books because we think I'm going to fill those knowledge and skill gaps, right? And having a growth mindset is going to keep me growing. And that's all true stuff. The problem is, as John Maxwell says, experience is not the best teacher. Evaluated experience is the best teacher. So if we don't take time to reflect and focus, then all we're doing is just input, input, input. We're not actually doing anything with what's in there. And if we don't take time to focus on what's inside and embrace who we are, then we don't really use the information we're pulling in. And we're just on this hamster wheel of consistent learning. I had several employees who were just consistently going on and on and on, learning more things and learning more things. I'm like, when are you going to apply for a new job? And they just thought I was weird asking them that. And I'm like, but you're getting all this information. How is it going to benefit you in your career? But when you learn to align who you are with where you want to go, that's what makes all that information gathering profitable, right? It's like you can gather all this information and do nothing with it. It's like having a closet full of clothes with the tags on. You're not doing anything with it. So what I would like to propose again, like I said at the very beginning, is it's not what you do that makes you an impactful leader. It's not your MBA. It's not the learning. It's not the coming in earlier and leaving later. It's who you are. And the who you are piece is your core values. So uncovering your core values now gives you the opportunity to create sustainable and impactful leadership. So, of course, my solution is magnetic leadership. And we look at that from 3 different angles. To lead with impact, I think you have to begin on this bottom piece here with who you are. And when you know who you are, then you know how you can show up. That's your strengths, your weaknesses, all that stuff. But then you have to learn how to communicate. And we're all wired differently. I shared earlier, I'm a DISC consultant. So that means that I understand how to help you know how you communicate and how others communicate. And then you can share what your strengths are in that communication piece. And then the other piece of my work is intentional optimism. It's how you live. It's taking who you are, how you communicate, and living that out with grace and ease. That's a lot, and we're not going to do that today. That's like a whole day's workshop or 2. It's working with me over 6 months. We're going to look today specifically at who you are, which is your core values. And as we focus on core values, I want you to see that core values enables you to do 3 major things that other things will not. Because, a lot of times we start from the outside and work in. All those myths are all outside things. They're things that are outside of us. They're learning we do, they're things that we can put on a resume. But I think that if we would just start from the inside out, as we grow and mature, we learn that working from the inside out is what makes a real difference. And understanding your core values is doing that work. It's working from the inside out. And when you know them, it gives you the authority that you're looking for to lead. Even if they don't give you that authority in your job, you will have the authority to stand in who you are. It gives you the conviction that you need, because when you know who you are, it's really easy to figure out what you believe and why. So then you have the conviction to lead. And it gives you the confidence. When you have authority and conviction, all of a sudden, your shoulders go back, your head is a little higher, and you have the confidence to lead in the way that is true to you. And it helps you align with exactly where you want to go. Now, when we talk about authority, I'm not talking about something that my boss would give me to make decisions, right? That would not fix the situation I explained earlier. But authority is your own source of internal authority. It's your authenticity and your charisma. People follow you. This is not, when I say charisma, this is not you salesman kind of charisma. This is the kind of charisma that you've met. I promise you know somebody who has this inner authority that you think, oh, they really know themselves. Because when you do, you can make decisions. All of a sudden, processes become cleaner and boundaries are clear. There's no questioning anymore. Everything becomes much simpler. It also reduces the tension between where you are and where you want to be. Because when you understand your own internal source of authority, you know exactly where you want to go. And that conviction piece that I talked about, these are firmly held beliefs, principles, and passions. Your core values, as we'll talk about in 1 second, are the internal compass. When you know what your own principles are, it is really easy to say, oh, that doesn't honor my core value. I'm not going in that direction. And when you know who you are, you know why you believe what you believe, you can stand tall in that. And that's a reference to the way I speak in my podcast. But here's one piece that I need you to know that really plays into the conviction piece. Every decision, circumstance, reaction, or outcome that has ever happened in your life has been affected by your core values in one way or another. They are that internal to you. They are that original to you. They are that inherent to you. So when you know what they are, then you really can lead with conviction. And finally, they do give you the confidence. They give you a clear vision. When you can see these are my core values and these are the main principles around which I already live, whether or not you want to, you're either honoring them or you're not, then you can see them and you have no more guessing games, right? You can make decisions more clear. You can put up your own guardrails. I like to talk about when you're bowling and with kids bowling, you put up those little bumpers in the gutters so that the ball doesn't go in the gutter. It's like putting up your own guardrails, your own bumper guards. Your decisions are easier. Your boundaries are so much simpler. Your boundaries are internal rather than external. People know, and you don't have to say, like I explain it with the example of my yard and my house. I don't mind people walking on my street in front of my house because we have no sidewalks. They don't go in my backyard, though. That's a little bit of a thing. And that would be a little bit of a no-no. But they also don't walk up to my front door and just come in. People know that a closed front door needs to be knocked on. And when we present ourselves with the kind of confidence in our core values and who we are, it's as if we're presenting a house to someone and they know they need to knock on that door. It's my decision whether or not I let you in. And therefore, I'm in control of my boundaries, nobody else. And I think that that's a thing that is a real game changer for a lot of my clients and understanding that concept. And then with relationships, being able to just build your relationships on your core values makes them more pure and more confident. And core values are essential for authentic leadership. If you don't know who you are, then there's no way you can lead with them. The definition that I use, because there's a lot of them out there, is that these are the principles and priorities that guide your actions. They are foundational convictions that allow a person to navigate all the twists and turns of life and keep your own identity and authority right in the forefront. They are elemental. They are very simple. When you look at a chemistry in your chemistry class, or if you think back to it, if you think of a periodic chart, these are your elements, right? They're like the very building blocks of all the atoms that we have. Core values are like that. They can't be broken down any further. They're the foundation upon which you build everything else in your life. They're unique to you. I shared that early on that my unique personality got me the job when my resume only got me to like the top 2 or the top 4 or whatever, because they reflect your own individuality and they are the most personal expression of you. But here's the thing, they are non-negotiable. Absolutely. In your life or your business, they're the line you won't cross, the standard by which you measure success. And whether or not you honor them is up to you, but you will feel it if you do not. Couple things to just kind of clarify as well. Core values are not your morals or ethics. Those are external, they're subjective, and they're based on your values, but they are not your morals or ethics. They're also not your beliefs. I love a good belief system. I'm one of those people, but beliefs are inherited. They're developed, they're changeable. Ask anybody who's changed a political party or religions. I mean, it's like beliefs are changeable. I do not believe today what I believed 10 years ago in quite a few areas because I've got more information and I have changed the way I believe. They're also not external. A lot of times we talk in business, especially about business values and the values that we prefer to have in the workplace. Those tend to be behaviors and external. And I love to tell people the example of family is people say, well, family is my top value. And it's like, I can appreciate that you value your family because I do. I value my family very highly, but it's something I value. It's not my core value. But they're also not directional. They're what I would call reciprocal. I have a client who their top core value is respect. She doesn't give respect without receiving it, right? It's like they have to go both directions, but they are intangible with documentable effects. Like if somebody doesn't respect her, they're inherent. I mentioned your internal compass. They're inspirational. They give you joy. They motivate you and they help you do what you need to do. And you're invested in them already. These are present in your life and relationships from the time you were born. Now, in order to unleash them, you have to actually know what they are. In a workshop, I would walk you through the beginnings of figuring out your core values, but I have a freebie that I will share at the end here that will get you started in the process. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you just a little bit about how you use them in leadership and how you incorporate them. The first thing is to remember when you figure out what your core values are, and my top three are freedom of thought. So freedom is really my top one, but it's really freedom of thought, authenticity, which means I get to be myself, and belonging. And so for me, I want everyone to be able to be themselves, and I want to belong, and I want everyone to feel like they belong when they're in my presence. So I don't actually inflict my core values on other people. That's just not that we don't need to make, I don't need to make your core values mine, and you don't need to make my core values yours. These are yours alone. But you do, once you figure them out, once you walk through this exercise and kind of get your core values, you can review them, practice making decisions, reflect on them, see if they need to be refined and reordered. I've had several clients who have picked them up and figured out their top five. And 2 months later, they come back and say, actually, number 4 has moved up to number 1 because they've tried to employ them. They've employed them in places like their belief system. When I figured out my freedom of thought one, it gave me the opportunity to do some deconstruction in some of my religious beliefs. It gives me the opportunity to use them in my decision making. You can practice using them as a filter. And it works really well when you say, I'm just going to run this decision through my core values and say, how does that honor them? Again, it goes back to your boundaries. They're internal. I shared the house example already. When you know what your core values are, you have a clear vision. So you could actually rewrite your vision statement based on your core values. I've had several clients do that. When you figure out your core values, you don't have to share them, but when you do share them in your relationships, I mentioned this a minute ago, it really can deepen them. My husband is sweet as can be, loves me. We've been married almost 29 years. And he used to say things to me like, wouldn't you agree that? But with my top core value being freedom of thought, that automatically set off red flags for me. And so when I figured that out, I looked at him, I said, I want to have great conversations with you. And I love that you want my opinion and that you want me to be included. I said, how about you say something else? And he said, okay, what do you think about this? And that changed the way so that's the communication piece, but part of that is honoring my core value. And then in work, if we're talking to entrepreneurs, I left my university job because it was too big. It was too much. It wasn't a place where I could be authentically myself. They don't, big organizations aren't really great for people who are completely free thinkers because I was like constantly moving outside the box and they were constantly pulling me back in. It's like, we have to do it this way. We're too big of an organization. So it gives you the opportunity to figure out what works and what doesn't. And when you fully integrate them, then you have the confidence to know what you know, what you know. It gives you strength, like this tree, to not be moved by your environment, but have the kind of flexibility that allows you to bend without breaking because you have a really good understanding of yourself. And then it gives you the ability to become this irresistible force of magnetic leadership. The authentic authority that is yours just shines through. I love this graphic of this little sprout inside a light bulb because as we plant these seeds of understanding, we then get permission to be ourselves and we can light up where we are and we don't have to rely on outside principles. So, again, as a brief review, understanding your core values gives you the ability to have authority in what you're doing, and other people will follow you, conviction of what you're doing, and confidence in how you do it. And it unlocks magnetic leadership, unleashing impact beyond decisions, vision, and employee satisfaction. This is bigger than that. It's bigger than all of that. And it all starts with you. So we looked at a couple of myths. I'm curious to know if those resonated with you. We looked at what we can do to combat those myths. And I just gave you a very brief overview of what it looks like to have your core values incorporated. For me, my story was frustrated at 50, and now I'm fulfilled at 57. I am not following all the good girl rules. My life is mine. Instead of having no authority with lots of responsibility, I'm an educator and a thought leader, and I don't feel stifled and I don't feel suffocated. I feel like I belong with my family, my church, my community. And now I am actually out sharing impactful, authentic relationships with other people. So there's plenty to do next. I have, like I shared at the beginning, I have my core values work that I do. I have the DISC communication and then the collaboration that we can build upon the foundation of you understanding your core values. So basically, the choice is yours. What will your impact look like a year from now? Because only you can do this. And I do want you to know a year from now is a realistic view because it is not an overnight flip the switch kind of thing. There can be areas of it that'll be a flip the switch. But if you would like to work with me, you can get a free download at my website, theintentionaloptimist.com/core values exercise. It's a one pager and it's super simple. And I'm just curious to see what kind of questions did that bring up for you?
Thank you so much, Andrea. A lot of useful information in this mini training. And I think we can apply this not only in our job or as entrepreneurs, but also in our families, because this got me thinking not long
Mm.
ago. We had a conversation with my son. He's almost 14.
Oh, mine's 15.
Oh, well, close, pretty close. And we talked about leaders in his class, and we asked him, so who do you think is a leader? Like the one who is the loudest in the room, or
Mm.
the one that, as you mentioned, really knows who he is, but it doesn't make a big deal out of it, and then the others just follow him. So knowing what you shared,
Mm.
I think we can go back to this conversation and talk a little bit more. But what I want to ask you, for people like me who sometimes, I mean, most of the times I'm focused on, strategies and things like
Mm.
that, like what action should I take next in my business. So once I'm going to download your freebie and
Okay.
I'm going to define my values, how I'm going to start incorporating those in my daily life and business, because obviously I'm going to do the exercise, but then I will forget about it. So how can I actively remember to incorporate the values in the work that I do or in the conversations that I have?
Part of what's in that one page core values exercise is the pieces after it. It's like now you go through and every 10 days review it. I also tell people to have, I use these little bitty notebooks, right? Little, it doesn't matter what's on it, right? These little bitty ones, you can get them in packs of like 25 in Amazon and they're not expensive. And I say, put that in there and then have like 2 pages per, like if, because it starts with, you start with all of your ideas of what you might be or what they might be. And then you narrow it down to 10. And then it tell you to take those out for a walk and just say, over the next 30 days, if you want to take that, how many times do I notice this core value showing up? Once you do that, you'll start to get in the habit of looking for how your core values show up. You will start paying attention to, oh, that's really, like even just little things with my husband, like, yeah, could you say that different? So then if you do any kind of review process on a monthly or quarterly basis for yourself?
On a quarterly basis.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to start with a quarterly basis, just add core values review in there.
Mhm.
Just because the easiest way to build a habit, I'm a James Clear fan as well. The easiest way to build a habit is to add it to something you already do. And if you do it once a quarter, because I work with the life wheel and other things. And so I just tell people go back and review them and take a look at them and see. Also on that sheet, because some people are fine doing it just by themselves, like they can follow instructions and they can do it all internally. Some people need a little extra. So at the bottom of that sheet, there is a link for, I do have a small digital course if that's something that would help, because then it walks you through the modules a little bit more carefully and gives you the stuff a little bit by little. It gives you a little bit more explanation and you can leave comments, etc. But I also have a hybrid coaching program that if that's not enough, and I just finished working with one woman, we just do this over 4 meetings over anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. As soon as you finish a module, then we meet for 30 minutes and we talk it out. And it's amazing to me how many people really need somebody to do that back and forth with them to help them see how they're maybe assuming a definition of a word or assuming that they have a core value in one area when the reality is it's something else. With this one woman, we went from teamwork to team oriented. And that seems small, but it's really big because it really wasn't that she wanted teamwork. It was that she wanted everybody to think like a team. And that's a very different thing. And helping her parse that out and get down to that was very helpful. So you can start by just doing your own review. I do a weekly review, just part of my planner. So sometimes I'll review them there. But I think doing your own review, and then I have other options too for working with me.
Oh, that's great advice. And actually, I do some kind of like highlights of the week,
Yeah.
actually. And maybe, yeah, I could add it over there, actually.
Yeah. So if you have a checklist that you work off of, just put core values in your checklist. And that way you can just say, well, what are they? And the other piece I want to say is that some people can do this in 5 days. And some people, it takes them 6 months. And you need to be gracious and kind with who you are and how you process, which is another reason I like to layer DISC on top of this so that people understand how they communicate and how they process things. Because, as a matter of fact, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll do DISC first to lay the groundwork so that when they start doing the core values work, they're not really hard on themselves if they don't move really fast. But when you know how you process things, if you already know that about yourself, if you're a thinker, if you're a doer, if you need 6 months, great. If you need 5 days, amazing if you can figure that out. Plus, some people have more awareness already inherent than others, and they don't have some of the programming that others of us may have had. I mean, for me, freedom of thought that's not okay. I mean, that was a not okay core value to have. It made me a strong-willed child. It meant that I was constant, like my sister's like, why are you beating your head against a brick wall? And I'm like, I know, but so there were a lot of negative connotations with mine that I had to overcome. So
And then one final question for people pleasers like me, how do I actually start communicating this with my clients? Because,
mm,
with people around me, with my family, as you mentioned, it's a little bit easier to communicate
mm,
that, I've thought about it, like this is my core value. And could you please, you know, ask that question a little bit differently? But when it
mm,
comes to my clients, to my potential clients that maybe, are expecting some things, or they were used to one thing and now I realize that, well, this is not who I want to be. This is
mm,
not my core value. I want to change that. How do
mm,
I go with that? How do you change something that was already out there and now
mm.
you realize that this is not okay, this is not me?
Well, if you actually did my digital course, you would see that I said that my top core values community. And what I did was I drilled down on it because they don't actually change. That's one other piece. They don't change. You just maybe get more specific on them. So I need to go back and re-record it now that I'm 5 years or 4 years out and being able to say, yep, this is me. Really, I can give you a better understanding of who I am today, and how it's played out. Sometimes those are just hard conversations. But I would say the very best thing to do is anytime you need to express something, one of the best ways to do it is, I have to say this, and this is not about you or anybody else, especially when it's about a client situation. You say, I'm making some changes in my business. They don't need to know why. It's none of their business. It's your business. And so and because a lot of times we want to make sure that they have what they need, and that's very good. But I even have just started announcing in January, I'm pivoting in my business. I'm pivoting in my business. I'm pivoting in my business. And when people start hearing that, they're not surprised. I've had coaches who have completely changed directions that I can no longer work with. It was very sad. But at the same time, I know what it's like to be the business owner and need to change direction. And so I think that's a good way to do it, is to get out in front of it. I prefer that, but that's my personality style. I think we all have a little bit of people pleasing in us. And I would like to encourage you that that's not a terrible thing. We see it as a really bad thing, but maybe to see it as you care about your customer, or you care about your family, and you care about the relationships. And that's how you can phrase it. I care about this relationship. So I wanted to let you know that I've discovered this about myself, and it's really cool. And I'd like to share it with you because I think it will help our communication. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's wonderful. So for those of us who want to learn more from you, you mentioned that you have a podcast. Can you tell us the name of your podcast?
Sure. It's called Stand Tall and Own It. And it is wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. And I started out in 2020 with Intentional Optimists, Unconventional Leaders. And I interviewed about 75 different leaders every other week. So I did that for over 2 years. And I learned a lot from these women. And I wanted people to, or other women, to have the idea or the understanding that you can lead from any place. You can be any kind of leader, that there's no one formula for a leader. And what I realized was I hit a point where I was at that learner, and needed to apply. So I had to take my own medicine, and I had to say, nope, it is time to stand tall and own that which I have been learning. And it's time to use that experience and that knowledge and change it. So what you're going to get in Stand Tall and Own It is a whole lot of personal application. Right now, I am in the middle of a series of explaining some tools that I have used in my business that have laid the foundation for me personally to be able to stand tall and own many things. And the first one was DISC, which I'm a DISC consultant. So there's 5 of those that are coming out. But other than that, it's a lot of things that my clients have talked about and that I've learned. So Stand Tall and Own It anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so happy that you were with us today. So grateful for your time, for your teachings. Definitely, I'm looking forward to downloading your freebie because I'm curious to learn more about my values and starting to incorporate them in my business and my life. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And please reach out if you need anything. I respond to DMs in LinkedIn and in Instagram. Facebook, not so much, just because it's like a lot. But if you want to reach out to me, those are perfect places to do it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.